Hello and welcome to Lost in Translation, where we look at things through a slightly trans sphere. Tonight I'm joined by Simona and Isabelle, so welcome.
Hey Nate.
Hello. So, I thought that today we could start by speaking about maybe something a little bit more serious than previously. In response to there was a recent, it was a conference and Germaine Greer was asked to speak at it in relation to, I think was it for Women's Day?
Was it at Oxford or something? I don't know. It was at some British educational institution of great stature.
Yes, and so there was a bit of an uproar in relation to some of the comments that she's made in the past about trans women specifically.
Well, funnily enough, I had a look at what it was like. What's transphobia? I've heard of arachnophobia, but there's no such thing as transphobia. And that was the sort of controversial tip of the iceberg.
My understanding is that one of the kind of moments when Germaine Greer, I mean, obviously she's a very controversial figure. The trans population is far from the only group of people who might, in many cases, be identified with feminism, who she's challenged. Like, that's kind of the nature of the way that she talks. But back, I believe, in the 1980s, she doxed she identified to the public and to the media a trans woman who I think had recently been hired onto the board of an all-women's college, maybe in Cambridge. I'm a little sketchy about the details. And thankfully the college stood behind this woman, but it was a moment where she publicly outed someone as being trans who otherwise would have just gone about their job. So I think that there is a bit of a long-running legacy there with material impacts on the lives of individual people.
Yeah, like she's speaking at Mona in the next few weeks, and she's also speaking, I think, at the Sydney Opera House, and so there's a few people that are getting a bit upset about that. Trans activists particularly, and also I guess like people that are looking at feminism from a trans inclusive point of view. So, you know, things that have been, I mean, she's been glitter bombed in New Zealand, you know, by some trans activists, which I think she just looked over the top of her glass for. I think that was the extent of the reaction. But, you know, like she said things like, you know, they're just grotesque parodies of femininity wearing too much eyeshadow. So I guess I'm a triple threat because I'm an architect, I'm a goth, and I do wear eyeshadow, I guess, and I'm also trans. So happy Mardi Gras, Germaine. Happy International Women's Day, Germaine. You know, do you like my black eyeshadow?
I suppose that with her, like she's one person within the, you know, we'd say extreme feminist kind of
I would be
sphere.
reluctant to use that word extreme feminist. I mean, it's a particular branch of feminism.
Trans exclusionary radical feminism?
Yes, I mean, I think that it is really important to identify that there is a particular politic there and not just kind of suggest that just by virtue of holding a particularly extreme version of something everyone shares, it's like, no, there's a particular set of misgivings toward trans people.
Yeah, but also like there's also Sheila Jeffries who says that we are not only fetishizing wanting to be women, which is a complete nonsense, because as soon as you start taking hormone replacement therapy, it just completely changes your entire sexuality. So I don't know how you can really sort of get off on that for a start, or changes your sexual energy, and that you're aspiring to the subordinate class. And I mean, like the way that the place that trans women take in modern day society is incredibly like low. Like we're treated like shit by by everybody. So the idea that we're trying to kind of aspire to like being cisgendered women is kind of ridiculous. We are transgendered women and we're very proud of it, but to try and kind of make out that we're giving up our privilege to become subordinate is just this ridiculous idea that, you know, it just defies logic. And it's just given so much traction at an educational level, universal level.
Yeah, I think it presumes a really naive point of view, or a naive stance that trans women are taking. I think that most trans women actually do have a fairly complex relationship to privilege and marginality, both our own as trans women, and I think in many examples, you know, like with regard to race, say, you know, like trans women, regardless of whether white or of colour, like we exist not just simply as trans women, like we're kind of oriented in relation to a whole bunch of different oppressions, and the idea that we're somehow not able to recognise the fact that we exist on multiple levels in relation to all of those, I think is really short-sighted, really unfair.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that, so from my perspective as being a trans guy, that with my relationship with feminism and things like that, that I was kind of seen by certain people that I had discussions with said that, well, you can't be a feminist because you've given that away. So you're trying to, you know, but it doesn't actually, it sort of, I think, detracts from my experience that I have been, you know, regarded as female and I have sort of experienced those experiences. But I'm suddenly trying to do something.
Well, the very interesting thing is that both Sheila Jeffries and Germaine Greer are very publicly outspoken about trans women, and they don't have a lot to say publicly about trans men.
Well, because trans men don't exist.
What, like, was it, which was it, lesbians didn't exist in the 18th century as well, so, you know, good-o. So, but I just find that they just don't even acknowledge that as part of public discussion, and it's just an inherent flaw. But if feminism's understood about equality, then, you know, and Sheila Jeffries at Women of Letters was just like slamming down on the table going, no, we must have separatism, you know, it's all about separatism. And people are just like, you know, shaking their heads, and she's describing any man who wants something to do with feminism as, you know, just some token sort of, you know. They had a name for them, I can't remember, anyway, too long ago.
All very interesting discussions, but we're unfortunately out of time. So thank you very much for coming on and having a quick chat. So you've been watching Lost in Translation.